Now, let me bring in my next guest, Alexey Muraviev in Perth, Australia. He's an Associate Professor of Security Studies at Curtin University. Very good to have you on the program, Professor. Give us your analysis here on what's going on. Let's look at Denmark. Multiple drones with their lights on flying near airports in Denmark for a second time this week. Who could actually be doing this?
Look, I mean, it's anyone's guess. I mean, obviously, one of the most popular conspiracy theories that it's the Russians. But if it's the Russians, then questions are raised immediately about how did they get into Danish airspace. If they would have flown all the way from Russia, that would be a significantly a long-range drone, and it would be something that would put NATO air defenses and surveillance and air detection capability to shame. If it was launched from within Danish territory, then the question is who operates those drones or who programmed them to stage such a operation. And obviously all of that adds to the ambiguity and anxiety concerning this sort of situation, given the overall state of strategic fragility in Russia-NATO relations. Having said that, we also need to remember that similar questions were asked last year and perhaps the year before when suspected drones were flown around strategic targets in Germany. So it's not the first time that something like that has occurred, but obviously it doesn't help to kind of ease tensions or alleviate concerns, because if an undetected aerial object flies in the vicinity of a strategically sensitive area, this time unarmed, what will happen if it would carry some sort of deadly payload?
Alexey, you raised an important question on how this could have happened, how those drones ended up in that Danish airspace. I want to read a quick statement to you from Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General. He says he just spoke to the Danish Prime Minister, and NATO takes the situation very seriously. NATO allies and Denmark are working together on how we can ensure the safety and security of our critical infrastructure. Is there a gap here in NATO preparedness in terms of how you protect NATO airspace from these drones? I mean, the Danes said it's a technological race with these drones and it's actually hard to keep up.
Look, I mean, to be brutally honest, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, but what you just read was a word salad. You know, it's a collection of statements that's supposed to deliver some sort of a message, but it kind of really demonstrates a degree of paralysis. And the problem that NATO has actually encountered since the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, by realizing how far behind it is in terms of thinking and planning for modern-day warfare. I mean, it's something that obviously many militaries across the globe are now coming to terms with, because the war in Ukraine has progressed so rapidly in terms of autonomous systems applications, the way how they can be used not only in terms of surveillance but also strike missions, and obviously subsequently defenses that can be employed against them. And Europe, by and large, I think remains largely unprepared for something like that. Denmark it would certainly be one of the examples. So NATO may be stating things. Also, it kind of actually comes across as a little bit of an embarrassment, because after NATO launched this operation Eastern Sentry, which is supposed to create fortified approach along its line of contact with the Russians. If it's a alleged Russian, for example, sabotage operations, the Russians effectively demonstrating that you can mount your defenses, you can make all sorts of bold statements, but if we want to do something behind your lines, we will continue to do it. So whoever is behind it is actually putting NATO countries on notice, and to some extent to shame, because when you run an operation undetected, unchallenged, in over highly sensitive areas, well, it doesn't come across as a positive sign.
Professor Muraviev, always good to have your analysis and to have you appear here on the program. Thank you so much.